And he shows up for training at 8 a.m. in the morning after drinking a fifth of vodka.
A Jacksonville officer admits to reporting for duty while drunk.
That's a big problem.
Why wasn't he arrested? Why is he still on the force?
When you went to the gun range, were you under the influence of alcohol?
Yes.
You were?
Yes.
A young mother vanishes without a trace. Her 6-year-old daughter sees it happen. Now, 3 decades later, the case is cold.
It's my job as her daughter to keep pushing forward and keep getting answers and asking the questions.
A high-ranking first responder in a high-profile hit-and-run crash.
I mean, I just assumed he was drunk. I knew that was drunk Chris. It wasn't a sober Chris.
And looking back on it, do you still think he was drunk?
Absolutely.
The accusations, the arrest, and that's just the beginning. An accidental overdose takes the life of her 24-year-old son.
I never thought that my beautiful baby would end up like this.
Her warning tonight for all parents.
It doesn't matter. I don't care how old you are, you're with me now.
They were barely teenagers when they were snatched from the South Side.
I thought we were gonna die there. Like, I thought that was just gonna be, I thought he was probably gonna just use us up and then kill us.
How they escaped from sex trafficking and what they want you to know.
Come on, baby.
Saving a loved one lost all alone.
The dog took off and showed us where he went.
How a simple jar could save someone's life.
Said we got a thing going on.
A rising star on NBC's The Voice, opening up on past struggles.
I had my gun up to my chin, and I was going to pull the trigger.
What helped him get through his darkest hours? It's a condition that affects millions.
I was just really struggling to keep my eyes open.
Why so many with sleep apnea are now struggling to get the life-saving help they need. And a crisis beneath the surface of Florida's waterways.
If we do not turn around the health of these waterways, we are going to lose our manatee population.
The effort to save the manatees from dying at record levels. Tonight, you could save a loved one's life, solve a murder mystery, or learn how to help save Florida's manatees. Welcome to Dateline Jacksonville. I'm Heather Crawford. First tonight, an exclusive investigation. A Jacksonville police officer fired after showing up for firearms training drunk. On Your Side's Ann Schindler investigates why he's back on the job against the sheriff's wishes.
It was a lot of alcohol in a very short period of time.
A fifth of vodka in a single night.
He quits drinking at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he shows up for training at 8 a.m. in the morning after drinking a fifth of vodka. That's a big problem. It's huge.
Those few hours of sleep, First Coast News crime analyst Mark Bachman says, were no match for Officer Gifford's blood alcohol content when he arrived for live ammunition SWAT training.
When you went to the gun range, were you under the influence of alcohol?
Yes.
You were?
Yes.
He was staggering, having to hold onto the rail to walk up. Admittedly, he said he was drunk.
So drunk, 3 other officers confiscated his gun belt and took him to JSO headquarters for a breathalyzer.
Blew a .3.
According to an internal affairs investigation, at 11 a.m., more than 7 hours after his last vodka seltzer, Gifford blew a .316. That's 4 times the legal limit of .08. More importantly, it's a flagrant violation of JSO's limit of .00.
JSO has a zero-tolerance approach to that. It's termination.
Lieutenant Michael Schell, who oversees JSO's Internal Affairs Department, says there is no acceptable alcohol level while on duty.
There is no justifiable reason why a police officer should have alcohol in their system while working as a police officer driving a JSO vehicle.
Gifford told the officers who took his gun belt, "I'm drunk." And it wasn't the first time. According to the Internal Affairs report, when he was questioned by investigators, he admitted reporting for duty impaired 5 to 10 times.
Could they have arrested him for DUI at that time based on the observations? Yeah.
The fact that he wasn't arrested was a mistake, according to Under Sheriff Pat Ivey. At a December meeting of the city's Civil Service Board, he said the officers, quote, messed up by removing him from the scene, making a DUI arrest more difficult.
I still think they could have charged him if they wanted to.
Gifford declined our interview request, but according to a transcript of his testimony at the Civil Service Board meeting, he admitted to struggles with alcohol and said he was committed to sobriety. He said getting caught was, quote, almost a blessing because he could no longer keep his problem a secret. I've literally been scared straight, he told the board. But the undersheriff called the case egregious, saying Gifford was so drunk he was, quote, knocking at the door of toxicity, yet he still drove 30 miles to the gun range.
Do I think he needs to be terminated? Yes.
The city's Civil Service Board disagreed. The volunteer board, whose members are appointed by the mayor, JEA, and the school board, decided by a vote of 4-2 that the decision to fire Gifford was manifestly unjust, a legal term meaning shocking to the conscience.
In this case, I don't think that's the case. I think the termination was just.
The board voted to reinstate Gifford after a 90-day suspension, with the requirement that he submit to alcohol screenings for a year. JSO Director Lawrence Schmidt said JSO will welcome Gifford back, but told the board their vote, quote, defies logic, overturning the decision of an elected sheriff and substituting their judgment for his. That, he told them, is manifestly unjust.
I think I would never touch booze.
Ann Schindler, First Coast News, on your side.
In April, Gifford returned to work after the Civil Service Board reinstated him with a 90-day suspension. He's been reassigned to administrative duty. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is appealing in civil court. What began as a robbery turned into a vicious attack on a Jacksonville mother, and it all unfolded as her young daughter hid and heard it all. As On Your Side's Katie Jeffries reports tonight, now, more than 3 decades later, the murder of Sherry Ross remains unsolved.
Sherry Ross had just picked up her 6-year-old daughter from kindergarten, and little Graylin wasn't happy that her mother told her they needed to clean the house. So Graylin was sent to her room when they got home. That punishment may have saved her life, because not long after they arrived home, a stranger attacked. Memories are what Graylin holds on to when she thinks of her mother, Sherry Ross. Like riding in the car together with the music blasting.
And it's one song by Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You. It's like our song, you know.
She was only 6 and life was good. She and her mom were inseparable. Then came May 8th, 1991. Graylin was in her room at their Thomas Street home in the Lackawanna neighborhood when she suddenly heard a man with a foreign accent yelling at her mother.
And I remember him saying, give me all your money and gold. And pretty much after that, I just remember like screams.
At first, Graylin hid under the bed, but then crawled into a nearby closet and closed the door, paralyzed by fear. When the screams finally stopped, she came out looking for her mother.
And I basically just followed the blood, which went directly to my mom's room. And I found her halfway on the bed, halfway off, facing upwards. I remember seeing her face and trying to shake her and wake her up. I was like, Mom, he's gone. Get up, and she wasn't moving.
Sherry was dead, stabbed to death by a knife from her own kitchen. The attacker gone. But Graylin was not the only possible witness. Investigators with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office interviewed a neighbor who said she saw a man near the house around the same time Sherry and Graylin got home. This is a composite sketch put together back in 1991. The man was described as a white or Hispanic male, possibly in his 20s, 5'8", approximately 135 pounds, no facial hair, shoulder-length hair, tan or olive complexion. Detective Ray Reeves with the Cold Case Unit at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office says it appears to be a robbery that went bad. Graylin says the man never used her mother's name, so she doesn't think he knew the family. Blood and fingerprints were found at the scene. So with new technology like genetic genealogy, the Cold Case team is re-examining this case to uncover Sherry's murderer.
Someone who would do this in broad daylight, in the middle of the day, in a house, there's really no telling what they were capable of.
And though the decades have been difficult without her mother, Graylin says she won't stop searching for the killer.
It's my job as her daughter to keep pushing forward and keep getting answers and asking the questions.
Detective Reeves says with the suspect in his 20s in 1991, There is a good chance he is still alive.
We're hoping that us putting this out with you all, having a chance to get this out to the community, that somebody will remember back at this day, this time, and it could be something, honestly, that would seem so trivial to someone, but it really could be opening to what we need to solve this case.
And give Graylin a chance to form a new memory, the day she got justice for her mother. If you lived on Thomas Street in 1991 or you know anything about the murder of Sherry Ross, please contact the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office or Crime Stoppers. Katie Jeffries, First Coast News, on your side.
Coming up, a local mother says her son's death should be a wake-up call for anyone battling drug addiction.
I think Max would say, "Sorry, Mama, I didn't mean to." But I think Max would tell people, "Don't do it."
A wake-up call. That's what an Atlantic Beach mom says her son's death should be for everyone who hears his story. Max Scheller went to Ponte Vedra High and graduated from a military academy. He loves surfing, baseball, and football. He was a brother, a son, a friend, and now part of a growing number of people who have died from an accidental overdose.
That big, beautiful 6'6" athlete friend. I never thought that my beautiful baby would end up like this.
Holding the urn that contains her youngest son's ashes, Rebecca Scheller knows how deadly fentanyl can be.
My family's heart is broken. I've never felt a pain like this in my life. It's a pain that doesn't stop.
Her son Max was just 24 years old when he died last spring. His death certificate and toxicology report showed that he had cocaine, meth, and fentanyl in his system when he died of an accidental overdose.
I had put coconut oil in my coffee. That week just started, and there was a heart in my coffee. And I snapped a picture and I sent it to my friend and I said, "There's a heart in my coffee." And then the shock went through my body and I knew he was gone.
Her intuition was right. Her son was found in the parking lot of a Palm Coast restaurant where he collapsed on his way to get food.
And I remember walking through the bedroom going, "My God, what do I do? What do I wear? What do I do? How do I do this? How do I get in this car and drive 45 minutes to be told that my baby's gone?"
Max had been in and out of rehab. His addiction, she says, started years earlier. First alcohol, then marijuana, later cocaine and pills.
Max didn't want to be an addict. Max and I had actually planned, when he got his life together, to work together to help other people. Unfortunately, now I'm helping him. I'm helping other people with Max in his urn.
She doesn't think Max had any idea that what he took was laced with fentanyl, a drug lethal in amounts as small as the tip of a pencil.
These pills look so much like the manufactured pills, you can't tell the difference.
When she went through his phone, she found this on his Snapchat, someone offering to sell him pills. Counterfeit pills laced with fentanyl are indistinguishable from prescription meds.
It is absolutely a crisis. If we look at 2020, Duval County experienced the highest rate of overdose deaths we've ever had. 73% of those deaths were fentanyl related, and of that 73%, over half occurred in the Gen Z and millennial populations.
TJ Ward is the director of Project Opioid Jacksonville, a coalition of community leaders working to confront the overdose crisis.
So it's crucial for us to bring awareness to this issue and to educate people on what the crisis looks like now, the new narrative, which is fentanyl is laced in everybody's drug of choice, and that is what is causing the majority of the overdose deaths.
It's been 11 months since Rebecca lost her son.
Hey Mom, I just wanted to call and say thank you for the birthday present, and I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.
His message on her voicemail, a reminder of the beautiful life lost to a preventable tragedy.
I think Max would say, "Sorry, Mama, I didn't mean to." But I think Max would tell people don't do it. One decision, one small decision can make the break of whether you wake up tomorrow or you end up in an urn.
One pill or drug laced with fentanyl can end your life. So parents, talk to your kids about just how dangerous it can be to take anything not prescribed to you. Visit projectopioid.org to learn more about how you can get involved. Still ahead, 3 young girls, barely teenagers when they were snatched from the South Side and forced into sex trafficking. Tonight, what they want you to know.
We all tried to protect each other, but we did the best we could.
When it comes to sex trafficking, Jacksonville ranks 3rd in the state. Tonight, we're introducing you to 2 local women who were barely teenagers when they had their innocence stolen. As Anthony Austin shows us, these 2 women are survivors.
I didn't realize being here would bring up so much emotion.
Sometimes when you don't know what to say, a hug says enough.
We all tried to protect each other, but we did the best we could.
It's been 20 years since these 2 Jacksonville women stood outside this apartment complex.
My memories of what happened here is a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, and being raped repeatedly.
Raped.
Tatiana Yoguez and Nicole McCall are sex trafficking survivors. This didn't happen to them in some bigger city or a different state. It all took place right here in Jacksonville at multiple locations around town.
This is where we were first brought to when we were kidnapped.
They say they were taken from the south side of Jacksonville at the ages of 12 and 13 and driven to this motel off Lane Avenue on the city's west side.
And we didn't have our clothes, so even if we attempted to run out of the room, we would have been naked.
To understand their story better and how this all happened, we need to go back to a cold day in January. The year was 2002, and these 3 friends, Tatiana, Nicole, and Jessica, were walking home after spending some time at the mall earlier in the day.
It was a nice, quiet neighborhood, never any trouble in the area.
But trouble was waiting for them when 3 young men drove up in a car.
We decided to get in the car with them. They said they'd take us home, and we trusted them.
When they got into that car, Tatiana says their attitudes changed. The men said they weren't taking them home.
At that point, we realized we made a bad decision. We all looked at each other, and it was just like, what do we do now?
The women say they were brought to this motel.
It's kind of hard seeing it. Because it's almost like reliving it in a sense.
And what happened next is something they will never forget.
As soon as we got through the door, he told us to strip down. And he took our clothes from us. He took everything that we had, he took from us.
After that, they say they were forced to take pills and drink alcohol. They were just children and helpless.
We didn't have a choice whether we wanted to take them or not. It was, here's these pills, wash it down with this, and it was alcohol.
Yeah, it was Hennessy. I remember the smell and just the taste and everything. And then and he also gave us cocaine. And so he just forced us to do these drugs.
From there, men started coming into the room, taking turns raping the young girls. For almost a month, they lived this life. They lived this nightmare.
We pleaded with him for him to let us go. We're 12, 13, and 14. We won't tell, just let us go. And he had no empathy. He had no care. It doesn't matter. I don't care how old you are, you're with me now.
While they were being held captive, their families were searching.
There was a missing persons report for all 3 of us.
Yeah, there were flyers everywhere, all over Jacksonville.
From this motel to strip clubs to homes to apartments.
This is just another place where we were trafficked.
The young girls held out hope they would be able to escape, but as each day went by, that hope faded.
I thought we were gonna die there. Like, I thought that was just gonna be, I thought he was probably gonna just use us up and then kill us.
That was until one day when one of the men watching them realized how young they were and felt bad about their situation.
He threw clothes on the ground and just opened up that back door, and he was like giving us that eye, like, get out while you can. This is your opportunity. So we looked at each other, we took the opportunity, we threw them shirts on, and we just ran out.
After escaping, they were reunited with their families, and you would think their story would have a happy ending, but that's not what happened.
We weren't treated that great from officials, so we were treated as though it was
like runaways.
We were,
yeah, that's how we were treated.
Promiscuous runaways.
Yeah.
The girls said they were given little resources or help for what they had been through and were sent back to school.
I attempted suicide when I got back home. I tried to take all my mom's pills that were in her medicine cabinet.
As adults in their 30s, they're now healing.
While I was in therapy, I started to learn more about myself and what I had experienced, and then I realized that I was in fact a sex trafficking victim. And then I shared it with Tatiana, and I was like, you know what? I'm like, we fall under that. I'm like, we were victims.
That healing, now in the form of a book they wrote, sharing their life story to help others.
It wasn't my idea to want to write it. Because I was like, no, I'm like, who's going to want to hear this, you know? But Tatiana was always like, just a writer, you know, just love writing. And so she was like, our story needs to be told. And I was like, you're right, our story does need to be told.
Their story has now been told, but tears still continue to fall. And those might be words the heart can't say.
As for Jessica, the third girl who was kidnapped and released with them, she was tragically murdered years later. Their main trafficker was also murdered after serving time in jail. Tatiana and Nicole both now help with law enforcement training. Many sex trafficking victims are first groomed online. Signs can include anxiety, paranoia, substance abuse, poor hygiene, and physical abuse. To get help, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. It's open 24/7, and you can remain anonymous. Still ahead, an on-your-side investigation into a Jacksonville fire captain accused of stalking and leaving the scene of a crash.
After I started calling him out on these things, that's when he started to have threatening behavior towards me. He's going to show me what a monster he's going to be.
A Jacksonville fire captain accused of stalking and fleeing a hit-and-run crash. JFRD Captain Christopher Lewis has pleaded not guilty to charges that he violated a restraining order issued for alleged harassment and threats of gun violence. He also pleaded not guilty to fleeing an off-duty car crash after causing at least $30,000 worth of damage. The charges against him have created both an image and a management problem for JFRD, in part because the woman who obtained the restraining order also works for the department. She spoke exclusively with On Your Side's Ann Schindler, as well as the only witness from the night of the crash. Both women hope their stories help keep the focus on what can be done to keep Lewis and the community safe.
He called me like 3 times and he just said that he had been in an accident and he needed me to come get him.
The late-night call from JFRD Captain Chris Lewis was unexpected.
We weren't speaking at the time, so I was kind of surprised that he even wanted me to help him at that moment.
His former girlfriend, Kara Pemberthy, says even though they'd broken up, she agreed to come get him.
I could see he was like bleeding from his hands and like a little bit on his face.
She cleaned him up, put him to bed, and the next morning, she says, Lewis gave her instructions.
He told me to say that he went to my house, that he walked there and knocked on the door, and he told me to say that he wasn't drinking. From that point on, it literally was just kind of like, make sure that he's protected at all costs.
I'm going to start off, if you wouldn't mind, what is your first name, sir?
Christopher. Captain Lewis's version of the crash is different.
I was heading to a friend's house.
He told police he was on his way to see Kara, a planned visit.
Where I was going in the first place last night, and again, just heading to her house. She knew I was coming.
Officers never asked Kara if she was expecting Lewis that night, nor did they ask her, or surprisingly him, if he'd been drinking.
I mean, I just assumed he was drunk. I knew that was drunk Chris. It wasn't a sober Chris.
And looking back on it, do you still think he was drunk?
Absolutely.
According to JFRD records, Lewis had a DUI in 2018. We asked the sheriff's office why investigators never asked if he'd been drinking. They said because Lewis couldn't be located, they couldn't conduct a DUI investigation. Some inside the agency believe Lewis has benefited from the political connections and influence of his father, a perception embodied in his nickname, Soup.
I believe it's son of union president.
Randy Wise is the current union president, a role he took over from Lewis's dad, Roger Lewis Sr., a well-connected and politically active union chief. Despite the nickname, Wise says, Lewis doesn't get special treatment.
His dad isn't union president anymore. And he's treated like any other member would get out of me.
After the crash, Kara Pemberthy learned about Lewis's other legal issues, including a February restraining order filed by a former girlfriend. That girlfriend also works for JFRD, which has presented a challenge for the agency. In her injunction request, she filed pictures with the court and shared them with First Coast News. Injuries she says she got during a fight with Lewis, and damage she says he did to the home they shared. She cited a downward spiral of alcohol-fueled instability in her court filing and included what appear to be threats from Lewis. A high-ranking officer who asked not to be named said her allegations are first and foremost a workplace security concern. But coupled with the pending criminal charges, he says they give the department, quote, a black eye. Lewis's integrity is in question, he told First Coast News. His stability is in question. That concern echoed by a former JFRD officer who said Lewis is, quote, very good when it comes to going into burning buildings, but that doesn't matter if the public can't trust you.
After I started calling him out on these things, that's when he started to have threatening behavior towards me, saying how I'm about to find out who he is and he's going to show me what a monster he's going to be. I, at that point, felt like I needed help.
Kara Pemberthy called police herself on April 13th. She says she does not want to get him in trouble, but she does want him to get help.
I don't know what that help looks like for him, but it needs to happen.
Ann Schindler, First Coast News, on your side.
It's a recall affecting millions of people with sleep apnea. Philips Respironics recalling CPAP machines because the company says using them could result in life-threatening injuries. But getting a replacement could take months.
Driving back over the Buckman Bridge, and I fell asleep at the wheel.
Emma Cooksey is one of millions of Americans diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea. The St. Johns County mom was diagnosed at the age of 30 after she fell asleep at the wheel while driving over the Buckman Bridge with her baby in the back seat.
I was just really struggling to keep my eyes open. I narrowly avoided a really serious collision with a large truck in front of me.
She got the diagnosis following a sleep study.
This is the mask that I wear at night.
A doctor prescribed her a CPAP machine, a device she wears at night to keep her airway open so she doesn't stop breathing.
Those are the kind of experiences you feel so lucky to have come out the other side of. I felt really alone and isolated in having sleep apnea. I didn't know anyone else with sleep apnea. And I thought I could start a podcast. Maybe there's some other people out there with sleep apnea like me. Welcome to the Sleep Apnea Stories podcast.
She launched the podcast Sleep Apnea Stories in 2020 during the pandemic. While her CPAP machine is not included in the Philips Respironics recall, she has heard from people all around the world wondering what they should do. Philips recalled millions of its breathing machines due to concerns that the noise dampening foam could break down and be ingested or inhaled, and could off-gas potentially toxic chemicals. Philips advised users to talk to their doctor.
So some people were told to stop using their machine completely, but that left their sleep apnea untreated. Untreated sleep apnea is really dangerous. It's not just that people can fall asleep at the wheel like I did. It's also you have an increased risk of heart attack and stroke. So a lot of people were really worried, understandably, of just waiting for a replacement machine.
It could take months before Philips repairs or replaces all of the recalled devices. And the recall has led to a shortage of CPAP machines available to buy. But Dr. Peter Nassar, who runs the Jacksonville Sleep Center, says there are alternatives for some patients. First, lose weight. He says 80% of people at their ideal body weight won't have sleep apnea.
If it's mild, sure, weight loss would be an excellent alternative. You don't have related health conditions, you feel functional and you're fine. Work on losing the weight, that's an acceptable pathway.
Second, consider a travel CPAP device.
It's just as effective as a regular CPAP device, so for folks considering a travel device anyway, this might be a good strategy until their recalled device is replaced.
Third, if you have mild to moderate sleep apnea, an oral appliance could be a good alternative for you.
The way this device works is it holds your lower jaw or your mandible forward, and it increases the space in your airway and treats the sleep apnea.
Fourth is this small device that is implanted. Think of it like a pacemaker for the airway. It's for people with moderate to severe sleep apnea who are not helped by a CPAP machine.
When you go to bed at night, you turn it on with a remote control, and every time you breathe in, the device senses your inspiration, sends the pulse to your tongue, and the tongue protrudes forward slightly and opens the airway and treats the sleep apnea.
And finally, ask your doctor if you're a good candidate for a positional device to help you sleep on your side.
Often on your side, your sleep apnea is not as bad as on your back. And it's simply a little bubble, and it goes around your waist, and you place this on your back side. And if you try and roll onto your back, obviously you'll feel that, and you won't sleep on your back.
The bottom line, there are several alternatives, but see your doctor to find out the best option for you. And know that you're not alone.
I think that the best thing is just get some support and find some other people with sleep apnea, because I think that really helps.
You can read more about these alternatives and see our in-depth report on the CPAP recall in this story on firstcoastnews.com. From the national spotlight to a voice of hope, the local rising performer who's inspiring others by sharing his struggles.
I look at my life a year ago. I attempted suicide. I'm a living testimony that you can be in a dark place, but just because you're there, that does not define who you are.
Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones.
The First Coast cheered on a Navy veteran from Jacksonville who climbed his way up to the finals of The Voice. Now, Paris Winningham is opening up about how a dark day almost prevented him from making it onto the show. Tonight, the lessons we can all learn from the voice of hope.
Yeah, that felt good.
It's a voice that resonates. Paris Winningham started singing in church when he was just 7 years old, and he hasn't stopped.
It's been a part of me ever since I was young. My dad always said, you know, you've always been reaching for a microphone.
He auditioned for a spot on NBC's The Voice twice and never got a call back. He almost didn't audition a third time, but his dad talked him into it.
I went downstairs after getting myself together. I flicked on my phone and set it up and did everything I needed to do. And I auditioned. I did one take, and I was getting ready to re-record it because I was like, I can do it better. But I just heard his voice was like, nope, that's it, send it.
The 33-year-old landed a spot on the hit show where America watched him battle his way to the top 3. But just a year earlier, it was a much different battle he was fighting.
I look at my life a year ago. I attempted suicide a year before I even started, you know, really honestly digging in and taking this voice thing serious. I had my gun up to my chin, and I was going to pull the trigger.
He's opening up to let others struggling know they're not alone.
I used to say, you know what? No, I'll never get in that dark place. I'll never be that dark. I'll never be that deep in depression where it'll take me there. Never say never, because you never know what life is going to bring.
Paris is now using his soulful voice to spread hope.
I was in a dark place. To come from there and be where I am now, I'm a living testimony that you can be in a dark place, but just because you're there, that does not define who you are.
Grounded by faith and family, the lyrics of his life are words he wants you to remember.
There's always hope. In a weird way, it gives me strength now, because now I can look back on it and say I was there, and the beautiful thing is I don't look like what I've been through.
For anyone contemplating suicide, he has this message.
It takes more of a man to open his mouth and say, I need help, than to sit there and just drown yourself in your sorrows and in your pain. Man, get up and talk to somebody. So you're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey.
He's using his new platform to strike a chord at a time when the country faces a mental health crisis, and so many need hope.
I can be a testimony, and I can be a help, and I can be an encouragement to those people that have been in dark places and have been in hard times, and that's why I take this so serious.
If you or someone you know is struggling, there are resources out there. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline 24/7 at 800-273-8255. Coming up, how a simple jar could save the life of your loved one.
I sat on the front porch from 1:30 until 6:30 until he came home.
The dog took off and showed us where he went, the direction he went. Saved me a couple hours.
Tonight, the story of a jar and how it could be used to save the life of a loved one. It's called a scent jar, and it's completely free. Jeannie Blaylock with how the scent of love could save you or someone you know from complete heartbreak.
That's my girl, yeah. We start with Daisy May, and my armpits.
So this is going to be awkward, but I will.
I'm here at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. 2, 3, 5 swipes under my arm to collect my scent.
That is a sterile gauze.
Then they store it in this evidence jar.
This is not contaminated.
It will last 10 years in your refrigerator. It is free, and it could save you from heartbreak. So let me show you how it works.
So I am the lost. You are the lost soul.
I'm playing the missing person. Daisy. Fayette? Daisy May sniffs my scent, and she's off.
Good girl.
Melanie Merritt, her trainer. She has worked hundreds of cases.
I've been doing this for 18 years.
And that command?
Fayette is Seminole. That means hunt. That girl.
Meanwhile, I am deep in the woods with Ramona Davis, officer in charge, 13 years now working these cases.
Within the hour, we need to have already found that child.
She knows the clock is the villain.
Get to work. Come on, baby.
But with a scent to track, bloodhounds can find a person even in water.
Get to work. Good girl.
And back to our demo. Daisy May, check it out. She finds me.
Ooh, good girl.
She followed my scent.
I think she's happy. Look at she's
The smell of my dead skin cells blowing off my body.
Just like a dog sheds fur, we shed our skin.
Millions of cells.
You are so smart. Way smarter than we are. It's not just that nose, it's the ears.
Those big ears act like a broom, sweeping up the scent to her nose.
That's my girl, yeah.
So this is a demo. But this is real life.
It was 1:30 in the morning.
Cecilia and Conrad live in St. Augustine. Conrad was the CFO of Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, but now he has Alzheimer's.
It was very scary.
And one night, he just wandered off in his underwear.
He wears those little jockey shorts.
Thank goodness, here in her refrigerator, Cecilia had the jar with Conrad's scent. She also had this electronic tracker. However, it did not ping right away.
We go all the way around to see if we get a ping.
But then the bloodhounds smelled the jar.
The dog took off and showed us where he went, the direction he went. Saved me a couple hours of trying to find him. I sat on the front porch from 1:30 until 6:30 until he came home.
The love of her life out by himself, lost.
In the dark.
Deputies found him a long way off.
3.5 miles.
But a happy ending. The scent jar plus the bloodhounds.
Makes a huge difference.
To see if you qualify for a free scent kit, we have a link in this story on our website, firstcoastnews.com, and also on our app. The scent jar is free. The electronic tracker, which is optional, is $250. They're dying at an alarming rate, but what can be done to save Florida's manatees before they vanish?
We had animals that they were starving last winter and never really recovered.
We are at a critical moment.
Our investigation next. Manatees have long called Florida's waters home, but the past few years have not been kind to the gentle giants. They've been dying at record rates. The culprits? Us. The impacts from climate change and pollution are impacting the seagrasses that the manatees eat, and experts say that big changes need to be made to keep them from going extinct. Our Leah Shields and Renata De Gregorio teamed up to dive deeper into the manatee crisis.
This is so beautiful. I had no idea.
Oh my gosh, this is magical to be out here today.
So we drove down all the way from Grand Rapids.
Beneath the surface of Florida's waterways, they're beautiful. A crisis.
I'm in love with them.
Manatees dying at a record rate, 1,100 dead in 2021. Double the average. They're starving to death.
There isn't enough food near the warm water source. They're faced with either starving or going further in the cold water to feed, and that's where they get cold stress.
It's been declared an unusual mortality event and means more manatees ending up here at Jacksonville Zoo's Manatee Critical Care Center. Craig Miller says they've treated more in the past year than ever before, and they're full.
So we had animals that they were starving last winter and never really recovered through the warmer months.
As the manatees huddle for warmth in the winter, crowds huddle to see them, taking for granted the sight of clear waters, unaware of the manatees' murky future.
We are at a critical moment.
We're at Blue Springs State Park, and right now there are a record number of manatees here just within reach of us.
It's a glimmer of hope, but experts tell us moments like these are fleeting. Their habitats and their food sources are being destroyed.
If we do not turn around the health of these waterways that will foster regrowth of these important grasses, we are going to lose our manatee population.
The St. John's Riverkeeper, Lisa Reineman, says seagrass is a manatee's main food source, and what's killing it is us. Pollution from fertilizers and septic tanks feed the growth of toxic algae, which then blocks the sunlight, preventing the seagrass from growing. The algae is blamed for more than half of Florida's manatee deaths last year.
Right now, the rules don't protect the river, and it's all about disposal instead of a long-term solution.
Further north on the St. John's in October, the St. John's Riverkeeper found the level of algae bloom toxins 300 times higher than the safe level for swimming.
Further south, in the Indian River Lagoon, the Water Management District says nearly 50,000 acres of seagrass vanished.
We need to do everything we can to help restore the food sources in the Indian River Lagoon and help relieve that population, but also prevent a crisis here in the St. John's River.
Manatee advocates are now suing the Environmental Protection Agency, claiming when it comes to water quality standards, they're doing the exact opposite of their name. In December, an unprecedented program to save the manatees began by feeding them directly. Feeding manatees is illegal under state and federal law, but these teams have permission, distributing hundreds of pounds of romaine lettuce near this Cape Canaveral power plant.
State wildlife officials say the manatees are eating, but it may not be enough.
Despite the rescue efforts, more than 260 manatees have died through the second week of February.
We can all do our part, but we also have to hold our government to their part to make sure there's sustainable long-term policies and that we prevent pollution and maintain water in our systems.
When you dive deeper, it becomes crystal clear.
It's not just about manatees, it's about the entire ecosystem. And if we're saving the ecosystem, we're really saving ourselves.
In Blue Springs State Park
and Jacksonville Zoo,
Renata DiGregorio
and Leah Shields, First Coast News, on your side.
Earlier this month, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis pledged more than $30 million to help save the manatees. That money will help expand efforts at manatee critical care centers and help fund pilot projects like the one we saw in the Indian River Lagoon. Thank you for joining us for Dateline Jacksonville. From all of us at First Coast News, good night.